This is the 45 Project. I'm Tamas Finta. Today, my guest is Greg Dixon. We are down in beautiful UK, New South Wales in Australia. We came down to see Greg and talk to him about his passion, the things that motivate him, the things that make him happy, his goals, and anything else that may come up in the conversation. So just before we start, just so you never miss out on any of these interviews, make sure you subscribe and click on the notification button as well. So,
Great.
Greg, thanks
Hi.
for having us. This coffee is just amazing. Thanks
Welcome.
for your hospitality.
No, that's no problem.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your background?
My background, I'm a 57-year-old male from New Zealand, and I've lived in Australia since 1994. Travelled a lot, and I have had a business for a long time called Career Builders, and it involves workplace mental health consulting and helping to manage people's careers as well. I've recently sold that company, and it's now in the hands of very capable people, and I'm taking some time off this year to get ready to walk the Camino trail. So I have a background in psychology and counselling, and many other things as we'll probably talk about during today.
So you mentioned the Camino. It is actually one of the reasons that sparked my interest, and so it started this whole let's get together, do an interview. Why the Camino? How the Camino came to your mind? What does it mean for you?
I lived in Europe for many years, and I never even visited Spain, where the Camino is, and I don't even know why I landed on this as an idea, but many years ago I read a book called The Pilgrimage by a fellow called Paulo Coelho from Brazil, a philosopher and author, very famous guy. And he talked about his walk in a narrative that was part fiction, part fact. And I was intrigued by that. And lately I had been thinking to myself, well, all my life I've been a goal-oriented person. But for one reason or another, I've kind of lost a few goal drivers, and I felt as though I needed to do something physical, a physical challenge, and I guess also in a way a spiritual challenge. As I head towards 60 years old, I felt it was something that I could do to mark the next chapter, and also a great way to try and lose 20 kilos before I go.
Well, I'm not sure if everyone knows what the Camino is, just for their benefit.
It's an old pilgrim trail that was started after one of the disciples of Jesus, allegedly, St. James, had gone to that part of Europe to preach the various bits and pieces that he believed in. And it didn't work out so well for him then. There were too many Visigoths and Gauls and Viking type people who pushed him away. So he didn't get many converts. Didn't end well for him back in Jerusalem, and he kind of got beheaded. But the followers of him, the followers of him brought him back to Spain. And the story has it that his remains are buried in this church of St. James, Santiago. And many years, pilgrims who wanted to go and be with him every year, they got sick of that dangerous trip to Jerusalem, so they decided to do this walk to Santiago instead. And for thousands of years, these pilgrims have walked this track. It's about 800 kilometres or 500 miles, and they learn a lot about themselves along the way. And these days, in this more secular world, and I can't say I'm the world's most religious person, people are doing it for different reasons, to tap into higher forms of consciousness, resolve complexes and difficulties that have been holding them back in their lives. Many are grieving for the loss of loved ones, whatever your reason is. It's a long, pretty arduous, challenging walk. It can be a solo pilgrimage, and things kind of drop away on the walk. Yeah.
And not just kilos we're talking about.
That should be a byproduct, and this has been my problem. Trying to lose weight has been a 20-year challenge for me. And when I think about doing it for aesthetic reasons, which is the primary driver in this society, I fail. But I'm an ex-competitive swimmer, an ocean swimmer. If I think back on all the physical, or all the major achievements in my life, a lot of them are physical achievements. Swimming Palm Beach to Whale Beach, swimming across the Auckland Harbour, completing the city to surf. And I seem to think physical challenges, even though I try to be much more multifaceted into arts, music and other things, I keep coming back to my Kiwi roots of loving sport. And I'm most proud of some of the physical challenges that I've overcome in life. And this hopefully will be another one of them.
Well, 800 kilometers, I bet it will be. Tell us a bit about your training. How are you preparing for this walk?
Well, walking and living in the caldera in the Tweed Valley is ideal in terms of the undulating trails, terrains, the countryside. There are hills, as you've noticed this morning.
Yep.
There are long, flat stretches of road. It's very beautiful. It's not too busy with city traffic. There's a lot of bird life, a lot of good reasons to get out of bed and do it. And I'm gradually increasing my walks. I think what I've got to try and focus on in the walk is about 20 kilometres a day for 40 days. But it's going to be carved up somewhat differently. So in order to have a few rest days along the way, I have to do some 26s, 28s, 23s. Right now it's March. My walk is in July. I'm up to about 16 kilometres now, which is taking me about 3.5 hours. My goal is to get to 20 kilometres 3 times a week. And if I can do that by June, that will be fine. Okay. And so far, so good. No aches, pains, injuries, anything like that really holding me back.
Fantastic. 45 program, as you know, we have an exercise program that we specifically designed for men over 40. We considered a 40-plus man's body, and we obviously, Barney and I understand that not everything moves as well as when people were 20, 25, 30. In terms of joints and any body parts, any other muscles when you're walking, have you noticed anything that may present a bit of an issue down the line?
I think it was great talking to you earlier on, a few months ago, when we talked about feet and ankles, knees and hips. Having had a few skiing injuries over the years, I'm conscious, and soccer injuries, I'm conscious of certain parts of my body as I walk, and I'm happy to say up until about that 14, 15 kilometre mark, I think you might recall I was recording any little pain points along the way that popped up and went away. I noticed the 16K walk, the last few Ks were more mentally draining than anything else, but I did notice a little bit of pain across the arch of the left foot. It didn't last more than a day or so, and I tend to jump in our pool afterwards and do a bit of hydrotherapy and running around the pool, which seems to prevent any stiffness. Okay. I'm not far off getting my first blister too, because I've been told by people wiser than me who've done the walk, everything else is nothing compared to blisters. Right. And so I've got the right footwear, I've got the right socks. Yep. Hopefully my training will make me a little lighter on the walk as well. But I'm not going to assume that nothing bad's going to happen to me, because what I haven't done is 23 Ks followed by 24 Ks followed by 26 Ks. Yes. And I haven't tested myself. So that all lies ahead of me. Yes. Yeah.
Let's go back to this environment, this beautiful, beautiful part of the world, which I'm very, very fond of. I live in a contemporary mountain, which is
that's nice
similarly a natural rainforest area. What was behind the decision to change city living to country living? Well,
we had a pretty good life in the northern beaches of Sydney. I was probably doing way too much car travel, getting in and out of the town, the city. And for many years, we had wanted to move to Byron Bay. It was a dream of ours. We'd got married there. We thought it was the most amazing place in the world, beautiful beaches, the colours were incredible, the people were really chilled out. It's just at the time we couldn't move our work life to that area. There's no work in the town, you have to keep travelling. And our clients weren't quite ready for remote location. A few years ago, we noticed that our clients had stopped asking us, can you be in my office this afternoon? And they started asking, what are you doing the week of the 23rd? Or I'm stranded at Adelaide Airport. Which airport are you at today? And I realized we were getting much more virtual in our way of working with each other. And technology had become an enabler for our business, which was, mental health training and other service delivery projects. We could pretty much live anywhere as long as we were close to an airport. And we thought, my God, we're ready to move to Byron. So we went and looked for houses, and it was changed beyond all recognition. It was more commercial. The prices were huge, and it had a bustle to it that was no different from Sydney. It was overcrowded. The traffic was terrible. Still a beautiful place, but it wasn't quite the dream town that we had pinned our hopes to. A few years prior to that, we had purchased a block of land in a national park just north of Sydney in the Hunter Valley. And we got used to a kind of country retreat style of living. And we saw this property come up in Yukai. Many years ago, Linny had trained for Kilimanjaro, and she'd done some training at Mount Warning here. And we'd come here and thought, what a beautiful place, and thought nothing of it until this amazing property turned up on the internet. And we just thought, we've got to have this. Right. Took about 8 months, but we finally bought it and moved. It was a big transition for Linny, who's lived in Sydney her whole life. Yep. Not so bad for me because I tend to move around a bit. But it's for anyone moving from the city to this kind of environment, be prepared for a massive blowout financially in your first year. Be prepared for a lot of stress that you thought you were moving away from. Different kinds of stress appear, and what we call the cost of change. The cost to your relationship, the cost to your finances, the cost to your own self-confidence. It's an epic voyage that took us about 3 years before we became comfortable with our way of being in the world up here. So not an easy transition, but a worthwhile one.
Sure. Mental health, how does it fit in your life? What made you choose to go down that path to provide help, guidance to people about mental health?
Originally, Career Builders was set up at the end of our lives as recruitment consultants. We used to find jobs for people. We had so many people coming in looking for work who were trying to get out of their jobs. And we noticed a weird dynamic around the movement of people in the workplace. People were wanting to leave for the wrong reasons, or maybe they wanted to stay for the wrong reasons and they were too scared to leave. But there were motivational issues impacting people's career choices based on fear. And we had designed a few very good fear-busting processes to get them to think through pros and cons in a unique way and make an informed choice about their next career move. That was so successful that we stopped doing the recruitment. And in fact, the recruitment was not helping our brand as trusted advisors or coaches, because recruitment's traditionally been seen as a bit of a predatory transactional business. The coaching is more aligned with psychology and counselling and a bit more high trust. So we let that business go, which was about half our revenue. And all having psychology backgrounds, we thought, what do we replace that with? And we heard about mental health first aid, which was a simple, not so simple actually, but it's a process that we can teach everyday people who aren't clinically trained to have early intervention conversations with people at work. Because by far the biggest problem impacting people coming to our jobs is that we're in high states of stress and anxiety, and had someone had an early intervention conversation with some of them, they may not have got to a crisis point in their lives as well. When we first started this, we could hardly fill a room with 6 people. There was that little interest in it. And now Career Builders is getting 3 to 4 organisational inquiries every day saying, can you please come and help us? And now it's just one of those things. It's become an everyday part of work life that people's mental health and well-being is important. Yeah. It wasn't always so important. Productivity and business process re-engineering was the way to go, and now we're into the mental health side.
Productivity heavily depends on the people in the organization. If they're not happy, they're not productive. Technology is worth nothing.
That's it. And also, I guess, there has traditionally been an acceptance of a high level of turnover as an acceptable way of doing business. Oh, well, they'll get burned out, they'll bugger off and we'll get some new people.
Right.
Whereas now they're going, that's really expensive when we do it that way. It's much cheaper to make sure we look after people and they stay and they advocate for our business and we actually get a more positive culture. Now, this may not last forever, but for the next 5-6 years, I think we're going to see an interest in people's well-being at work. Hopefully that won't change. Let's wait and see.
Let's get a little bit more personal, if
Sure.
you don't mind.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you wanted to share with us one thing in your life that if you could go to that decision you made there or that turn you made there, you would do very differently today.
It's hard because everything leads you to a certain path.
Sure.
I probably would not have spent so much time working extraordinary hours for someone else's gain. 38 years old, I went into self-employment and stayed that way until I sold the business a few years ago. I think as part of that earn-out process, I stayed with a bunch of really nice people, but I was working for someone else. And at the end of the day, that had a limit to it. So something in my life that I would do again, I probably would have exited earlier. No fault of the people that I sold the business to. They were wonderful people. I couldn't have sold or worked for anyone else, let's face it. But by staying, the blocking or squashing down of any feelings of discontent started to lead to a bit of burnout. And one of my stress responses is to work harder and harder and harder and harder. And then I stop taking care of myself and then I get angry and I start blaming and I start externalizing the problem to some other source. And I got to a point last year where Linny said to me, you've got to stop. I'd finished a workshop, I was driving back to my hotel and I had the most extraordinary panic attack on the M4 from Western Sydney back into town. My heart was racing and I'd just been talking about this in a workshop. Right. I'd never had a panic attack before. My world closed in, I got tunnel vision and I felt that the cars in the lanes next to me were like a car chase movie. They were trying to ram me or come in from the side, and they weren't, of course. I got to my hotel, I burst into tears, I rolled around on the bed for about 3 hours, went to sleep. I rang Lenny and said, I can't come home tonight, I'll come home tomorrow. Stayed an extra night in the hotel and was just exhausted. And that was a turning point for me where I said, man, you're a pretty determined guy. You've pushed your body harder than it wants to, and it's now just saying no.
So I suppose it's fair to assume that you're not the only guy this has happened to, right? Over 40 with all the responsibilities, kids at home, mortgage to pay, cars to pay, whether you're running your own business or working for someone. A lot of the guys in our audience in management positions, their responsibility is not just themselves. In fact, the way I see it, tend to put ourselves last. What is your advice to anybody who doesn't wish to spend the night in a hotel instead of going home to the loving family, having to pull over with the car in a panic attack? What is the advice you would give these guys?
I thought stress was something that happened to other people. And the funny thing about stress is you don't know it's happening to you until it's too late. It's a bit like when you let yourself get cold. By the time you go, I've let myself get cold, and you put a warm coat on, you're still not warm for another half hour. And it's the same. And it's very easy when you feel as though people depend on you to keep pushing through the snow, through the ice, through the rain, through the wind, because you have this kind of pride of achieving things against impossible odds. there is a time when you need to listen to really small signals, and I didn't listen to those.
A few more details about the signals, Greg. What if I was going down this path? What are the things I would have to take notice of?
Well, some things that I didn't even see because they were blind spots. Snapping at people, road rage at the lights, yelling at, for no reason, at the mildly slow person in front. When you've been in a perfectly fine mood. Suddenly snapping, suddenly grumping, suddenly being told or being given feedback that you're being aggressive or you're being angry when you don't feel like you are.
Did it surprise you when you caught yourself?
Massively. And then maybe self-soothing with food too much or drinking too much.
Right.
Not sleeping, finding it quite normal to wake up at 2, 3 in the morning. And I might as well use the time.
Down to something.
I've got a lot on.
I've got a lot
on.
Yep, I've got a lot on.
And sleep, well, who needs it?
Right.
Now I realize that sleep's the key to my success. So little signals, and don't beat yourself up if you miss those signals. I would say listen to people around you who care, who are giving you feedback that you don't want to hear and you wish would go away, because it's probably real.
Now, us guys, we don't like admitting anything like that, any weakness, don't hate asking for advice, I'm not lost, I know where I'm going, an hour later, oh shit, I don't know where I'm going. Have you got an advice how to overcome this feeling that now it's a weakness, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to share it, I'm going to work this out inside, I don't need help, I'm just going to deal with it on my own.
I think it's a bit of a cliche now because everybody uses it, but the best analogy for me is the oxygen mask example from the plane. Yep. So when they say, in the event of an emergency, oxygen masks will fall from the compartment above you. If you're traveling with small children, please attend to yourself first before fitting the mask to the child. Yes. So you see these parents running out of air trying to fit their child's mask, and then they collapse. So that you're no use to anybody else if you don't pay attention to yourself. If you make sure that you are in good shape, that you can think clearly, that you can accept feedback without getting upset, then you're traveling okay. And if some of those things aren't happening, it's important to address those before you externalize, or instead of blaming, spend all of your time helping and rescuing others, because that is also a stress response for many people. So when you feel the need to do that, have a check-in on how much have I done for myself today. It's in a way, and I say this in some of the workshops that I run, motivation's like a petrol that drives us. And most motoring enthusiasts will know, if you drive around on the orange light with a nearly empty petrol tank, the car won't perform as effectively. And it's the same for us. From a neuroscience perspective, we can't make good decisions because we can't connect with our prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain at the front, when we're under that sort of deficit of fuel. And the fuel might not be food, it might be sleep, it might be rest, it might be self-care in another way. But we need to spend 20 to 30 minutes every single day filling up our motivational fuel tank, because otherwise we're pretty useless to other people.
Yes. I've got a fair few over 40 male clients, and oftentimes when they have an issue, a shoulder or back problem, I give them a bit of a homework. I ask them to do a couple of things, 5 minutes every day, preferably twice a day. After 3 or 4 weeks, I ask them again, have you been doing your homework? And 8 out of 10 will say, no, I haven't got around to do it. I just couldn't find the time. You think guys can find the time?
Last year I went to see
Should they find the time?
Yeah, totally. Being told by your doctor that if you keep your stress levels the way they are, you won't see retirement. That's a pretty big message.
Right.
We can find the time to do something for someone else. We can find the time to finish that email. We can find the time to go that extra mile to meet a deadline for someone. We can find the time to say, no, I need to do this exercise that Tamas has given me.
For myself.
Yeah, that's it.
Um, just something a little bit on the lighter side of things. Would you share 3 of your greatest achievements?
Giving up smoking at 42,
Okay.
18 failed attempts,
Wow, okay. That's a good one.
and 19th time was good. Still not a drop or not a puff since. You want to say things like my dogs and my marriage and all of that, and they're wonderful achievements in life. Moving to Yukai was a good achievement. I'm still very proud of swimming the Palm Beach to Whale Beach 3.5K through the surf. And this one coming up will be a good achievement
Camino
too.
will fit as number 3 for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Greg, we've been sort of working a little bit together.
Yeah,
Been
for
giving
sure.
you a bit of advice on how to tackle this third great achievement, the Camino. I'm looking forward to working more.
Yeah.
Making sure that you are as prepared as you can be.
I'm grateful for that.
You all the success and have all the fun. I'm very envious. It is on my bucket list as well. I would love to do the Camino as well one day. And yeah, thanks for all the wisdom you shared with us and for hospitality and taking us for a walk down to the beehives.
No worries.
To the creek. So much appreciated.
It's a pleasure.
So guys, Greg Dixon from UK, New South Wales. I will see you again soon.